Okay, let's unpack this. Today, you and I are exploring the hidden architecture of a piece of text that, at first glance, seems almost comically simple.
Right, it really does.
Yeah, so we are jumping into a transcript from a source called the DFY Channel. The host goes by the name Jack, and the specific document we are analyzing is titled Day 5, Lunchtime.
And I mean, on the surface, it sounds like a generic prompt from a beginner's language app.
Exactly.
Just, a story about a guy getting hungry and ordering some food. But if we look past that elementary vocabulary, we can actually see the bare metal scaffolding of how human memory works.
And that is the whole mission of our deep dive today. We are not just reading a straightforward story about grabbing a midday meal for you today. We are unpacking the incredibly deliberate sequence Jack uses to take an audience from isolated abstract concepts into a fully realized narrative.
And finally, into a highly calibrated retention test.
Right? It's a journey.
It is, because in a world where you are constantly bombarded by chaotic, disorganized information, this transcript strips everything back to the absolute studs. It provides a blueprint for how to process and present information effectively. So let's look at how Jack actually kicks this off. The very first section of the text is labeled warm-up words. He starts with a brief intro saying, "Hello everyone, this is Jack. Welcome to the DFY channel. Today's topic is lunchtime."
Standard opening.
Right, standard opening. But then, immediately, before any story is introduced, before we even know who the characters are or where they're going, we plunge straight into raw vocabulary.
No context, just words.
Exactly. The text lists exactly 6 words. It goes lunch, food, hungry, restaurant, eat, and then the instruction to repeat.
And the sequence of those isolated words is doing a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes.
How so? Well, think about it from the perspective of schema activation, which is a concept in cognitive psychology. A schema is basically a mental framework. So when Jack says the word restaurant, he is firing up a specific neural pathway in your brain that already contains everything you know about menus, waiters, sitting at tables.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though.
Go for it.
I look at that list, lunch, food, hungry, restaurant, eat, repeat, and my first instinct is to roll my eyes a bit. It feels like getting handed flashcards on the first day of school.
Yeah, I can see that.
And we are usually told that rote memorization is a terrible way to learn because it lacks context. So why is it effective here?
That is a completely fair critique. If the lesson just stopped at the flashcards, it would be a total failure. But you have to look at what those words are doing in the context of cognitive load theory.
Right, working memory.
Exactly. Your working memory can only handle a very small amount of new information at any given time. By isolating those core concepts up front, Jack isn't asking you to learn the story and the vocabulary simultaneously.
I see.
He is giving you the individual bricks before asking you to build the house.
He's clearing the runway. And there's a detail right after that command to repeat that I found really interesting.
What's that?
The text doesn't just ask the audience to repeat the words internally. It explicitly lists those exact same words a second time in the exact same order.
Yes.
It physically reads lunch, food, hungry, restaurant, eat.
That double repetition serves as an anchoring mechanism. By providing these core building blocks twice, sequentially, the text lowers the cognitive barrier.
So they are locked in?
Precisely.
Yeah.
When you eventually encounter these words in the narrative that follows, your brain doesn't have to pause to process them. They're already queued up in your working memory, allowing you to focus entirely on the action of the scene rather than the definitions of the words.
So once our brains are primed with these warm-up words, how does Jack actually put them to use?
We transition into the story section.
This is where the magic happens. Yeah, this is where we move from those floating, isolated concepts into a highly relatable chronological setup. The text begins the narrative with 3 short, punchy sentences. It says, "It is noon. I feel hungry. It is lunchtime."
Notice the chronological precision there. The time is established, the physical sensation is acknowledged, and the resulting event is declared.
It's logical.
It's an unbroken chain of cause and effect.
It almost feels like a camera following the narrator.
Yeah.
We get the setup, and then the text traps the progression of actions step by step. It states, "I leave the office. My friend walks with me."
So we have our first secondary character introduced.
Right. Then they arrive at the location. We go to a small restaurant. Jack includes very specific sensory details here. The restaurant is explicitly described as small and quiet.
Let's pause on those 2 adjectives for a second. Small and quiet. They are vital because they establish the ambiance of the environment without overwhelming the narrative.
We aren't getting a 5-page description of the decor.
Exactly. We don't get a description of the wallpaper or the traffic outside. We get just enough texture to build a contextual world. Human brains are wired for episodic memory.
Meaning we remember events better than facts.
Far better. We remember events and experiences far better than abstract facts. By adding a friend and a quiet atmosphere, the text transforms those sterile warm-up words into a lived experience.
You know, that reminds me of trying to study for exams back in college. If I just stared at a list of historical dates, they would evaporate from my brain the second I looked away.
Sure, we've all been there.
But if I was studying in a specific coffee shop with some weird jazz song playing in the background, somehow the environment anchored the information. When I sat down for the test, I would remember the jazz song, which would trigger the memory of the textbook page.
That is a brilliant analogy.
It seems like Jack's text is artificially manufacturing that environment.
But the text is providing the jazz song in the coffee shop, yeah. They sit at a table, a waiter comes, they look at the menu. It is a flawless sequence of the micro-actions required to dine out.
Then we get to the actual meal. And I love the contrast presented here. The text specifically notes, I order rice and chicken. But immediately following that, it says, my friend orders noodles.
That shift is so important. Up until this moment, the text used we for all the shared actions.
We go to the restaurant, we sit at a table.
Right, we look at the menu. But when the food arrives, the perspective splits. The narrator is characterized by the rice and chicken, and the friend has a distinct identity characterized by the noodles.
Creating a bit of separation?
It deepens that episodic memory you were just talking about. It creates a vivid, contrasting image in the listener's mind.
The resolution of the scene is just as deliberately paced. The text tells us, soon our food arrives. Then we get another sensory detail. The food smells great.
Setting the mood again.
Yeah, and it goes on to describe the specific actions that follow. We eat slowly, we talk and laugh.
The emotional arc of the scene is actually quite sophisticated for such a simple text.
Really? How do you mean?
Well, the urgency and slight discomfort of feeling hungry at the beginning is completely replaced by a sense of calm and satiation. The primary function of the lunch, which is eating, is paired with the social function of talking and laughing.
And it concludes with a definitive judgment, lunch is delicious. Before seamlessly transitioning back to the reality of the day, after lunch, we go back to work.
It's very tidy.
When you string all those small details together, it creates a complete vignette.
But if the ultimate goal of this transcript is true retention, simply telling a nice story and walking away isn't enough. We have all listened to a great anecdote and then completely forgotten the main point of it 10 minutes later.
Oh, constantly.
You have to synthesize the material to make it stick.
Which brings us to a major structural shift in the text. We move from the passive storytelling of the story section into active participation with the repeat after me section.
And notice he doesn't ask you to repeat the entire vignette.
No, not at all. Jack extracts 5 specific sentences, complete with intentional, scripted pauses between each one.
The curation of those 5 sentences is where the instructional design really shines.
Let's look at them. The text says, it is lunchtime. Pause. I feel hungry. Pause. We go to a restaurant. Pause. We eat lunch. Pause. The food is delicious.
If we analyze that selection, those sentences summarize the core emotional and physical beats of the story. The office, the waiter, the menu, the specific food orders.
All of that is bypassed.
Completely bypassed.
Yeah.
Jack has extracted the absolute skeleton of the narrative, and those explicit pauses are crucial.
They give you time to think.
They serve as built-in processing time, allowing the audience to vocalize and solidify the foundational sequence of the event before moving forward.
It's taking a detailed, high-resolution photograph and tracing over it to create a simple line drawing. But here's where we hit the listening again phase.
Yes.
And for anyone trying to understand how to effectively process or present complex information, this is the massive aha moment of the entire deep dive.
It truly is the turning point of the text. The listening again section presents a newly condensed version of the story, but there is a massive structural change.
I was reading through this, expecting a standard recap, and suddenly I realized the friend is completely gone.
Vanished.
The quietness of the restaurant? Gone. The act of looking at the menu? Nowhere to be found. And those noodles the friend ordered? Erased from the record.
Let's look at exactly what survives in this phase. The text reads, it is noon, I feel hungry. I go to a restaurant. I eat rice and chicken. The food is delicious. Then I go back to work.
It is entirely stripped down to the first-person perspective. It's exclusively focused on the I.
What Jack is doing here relates heavily to mitigating cognitive overload and combating the forgetting curve. During the initial story phase, the text needed the friend, the quiet restaurant, and the noodles to build that rich, episodic world we discussed.
It needed the jazz music in the coffee shop.
Precisely. It needed the color. But during the review phase, those peripheral details suddenly become liabilities.
I see this happen constantly in the corporate world.
Oh, tell me about it.
When someone is trying to explain a new software rollout to their team, they often give them all the noodles. They spend 20 minutes talking about the budget meetings that led to the software, the bugs the developers had to fix, the vendor negotiations.
Right, all the background noise.
When all the team actually needs to know is, click this green button to submit your expenses. They force the audience to hold on to the B-roll, and it completely drowns out the core message.
That is a perfect real-world application. You are increasing their cognitive load with narrative B-roll. Jack intentionally dismantles his original story to show the audience what actually matters for long-term retention.
Just the core journey.
He strictly isolates the primary subject and the main sequence of events, focusing the audience's cognitive energy entirely on the core journey of the narrator.
It proves that true understanding of a topic isn't about memorizing every single detail. It's about being able to identify and isolate the load-bearing beams of the narrative. You have to be willing to cut the B-roll.
And once you have isolated those load-bearing beams, the final step of the cognitive loop is testing their strength.
Which sets up the final interactive layer of Jack's transcript, the mini-questions. The testing section here is incredibly targeted. There are only 2 specific questions asked.
Just 2.
The first is, where do I eat? And the second is, what do I eat?
Look at how the text answers its own questions. To where do I eat, the text answers at a restaurant. To what do I eat, the text answers rice and chicken.
It completely ignores the friend again.
This is a crucial pedagogical choice. If the test had asked, what does my friend eat, it would have been punishing the audience for following the rules.
Because it told them to ignore the friend in the recap.
Exactly. It would be testing them on a peripheral detail that the text itself just told them to drop during the conversation phase. By asking, what do I eat? And confirming rice and chicken, the text rewards the audience for focusing on the primary narrative thread.
The assessment aligns flawlessly with the condensed material.
It does.
It's incredibly satisfying to see the mechanics of it laid bare like that. Jack essentially makes a silent contract with the audience. If you focus on the core elements I am highlighting for you, you are guaranteed to pass the test.
And it builds confidence.
And then we reach the ending section where we get the sign-off.
The ending provides immediate positive reinforcements.
Yeah.
The text explicitly states, excellent listening and great job today.
It gives you that little dopamine hit of a job well done, but it also includes a specific call to action. Jack says, keep practicing every day.
Yes, and then he promises continuity with the final lines, see you tomorrow, on the DFY channel.
See you tomorrow.
That's a powerful phrase.
That continuity isn't just a friendly sign-off. It is an appeal to spaced repetition. By stating, see you tomorrow, the text establishes that this highly structured method is a daily practice.
It's not just cramming once and forgetting it.
Learning isn't a one-off event. It is a habit loop. You have to continually re-expose your brain to the material over time to interrupt the forgetting curve. So, bringing it all together for you, why does a rudimentary story about a lunch break matter to your daily life?
It's a fair question.
Because the Day 5 transcript from the DFY channel is a masterclass in information delivery that you can steal and apply tomorrow morning.
It demonstrates that effectively communicating knowledge isn't about just dumping a pile of facts onto a desk. It requires a progressive, intentional system.
You start by isolating the core vocabulary, those warm-up words, so the audience doesn't have to define terms on the fly.
Right.
Then you build out a detailed contextual narrative so those concepts have an episodic memory to attach to.
From there, you isolate the key emotional and physical beats through active repetition.
The skeleton of the story.
Yes. And then, crucially, you condense the story down to its absolute core, deliberately stripping away the secondary details to focus purely on the main sequence of events.
And only then do you test the recall on those load-bearing beams.
It's a perfect sequence.
Whether you are prepping for a massive presentation, trying to absorb a dense 20-page research article, or just trying to explain a complex topic to a colleague without losing their attention, Jack's method works.
It really does scale to any level of complexity.
Breaking down, repeating, and intentionally condensing information is how you process new material without ever succumbing to information overload.
Clarity is rarely an accident. It is almost always achieved through deliberate structure and ruthless editing.
We spent a lot of time talking about that ruthless editing today. We looked at how, during the listening again phase, Jack's text deliberately drops the friend character.
The quiet restaurant disappears.
The friend's noodle order is completely erased from the record, all to focus solely on the narrator's rice and chicken.
The B-roll is swept off the cutting room floor.
So, based purely on how this simple text is structured, here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over on your own.
I love this.
What does this intentional removal of secondary details in the final summary phase tell us about the sacrifices we must make to preserve a narrative's core meaning when trying to commit it to memory?
It's a tough balance.
Are there details in your own life, your own projects, or your own studies that you are gripping onto so tightly that they are actually preventing you from remembering the main point? Sometimes to remember the story, you have to be willing to forget the noodles. Until next time, keep digging deeper.